now.
9 minutes. Thank you so much to Beth and Claudia from the Green Room there. I'm Scarlet Desorgher. I am joined by Joe Radford, who is running for USU Activities Officer. Joe, tell us the main points of your manifesto.
First of all, hello, great to be here. So the key kind of 3 points of my manifesto. First of all, I want to support and highlight the importance of student groups. I want to make sure that we're creating opportunities for all students. And finally, I want to make nightlife safer, more accessible and more student-led. So there's the kind of 3 headlines.
Let's start with student groups then. Mm-hmm. How do you plan on expanding them?
So to kind of start on the highlight element, I think there's a lot that student leaders and student groups do to kind of enhance the experience of, students at the university. The vast majority of people come here for their degree, but I know a lot of people that wouldn't still be here if it weren't for what they did outside of their degree. And I don't think we get enough recognition for that. I would like to see student groups being showcased at university open days, so that when students are kind of coming to look at the university, a factor that they take into account is what groups, what other extracurricular things could I get involved with? And I think in doing that, we gain more recognition from the university as an important part of kind of student life. And with any luck, they see us as something that actually brings people to the university, gets us more support, gets us more recognition, and, who knows, even more funding potentially. And
I was going to touch on funding. It's one of the things that a lot of student groups struggle hugely with. Mm-hmm. What's your plan to tackle that?
It's a difficult one. In terms of kind of increasing money that is available, there isn't a lot we can do there, but it's trying to make sure that the grant money that is available to student groups is being used and allocated correctly and efficiently. That's already done kind of through the 2 committees, so Media Committee, Societies Committee, and it's going beyond that as well. For instance, there is the activities grant. So this isn't necessarily just for funding student groups, but it's for funding students' activities and getting involved with those things. So if your household is below a certain income, you can apply to the activities. Currently, that only applies to membership fees. So you can get reimbursed. And that's great because there are some very expensive activities to get involved with. I think it's £80 to buy a football membership with the university, which, who can afford? I couldn't afford £80 for a student group. But at the minute, it's just for that. And I'm aware that money that is put aside every year is not all being spent. And so I would propose we expand what it can be spent on. So offer it to people to spend on specialist equipment. My flatmate has just had to purchase a bow. She's got involved with archery. And that set her back like £150, which is, a lot. And, if there were students who wanted to get involved with those activities and can't afford to, fork out £150 to spend on specialist equipment, or, they need to spend money to go, like for the Caving Society, every week they go on trips. If they can't afford to go on those trips, it's no use being able to pay for the membership through that grant. So I think there's things that we can do there to kind of tweak things and make sure that the money that is available to students and to student groups and, students who want to be involved in them is being spent effectively. Equally...
So will that not mean
Go on.
that fewer students will have access to this grant? If you've got the certain amount of money, the uni says there's no more money, mm-hmm. So you go, okay, well, we'll give funding for specialist equipment to these students. That means fewer students, right?
Not necessarily. As far as I'm aware, and, it's possible I could be wrong on this, I'm going off what I've spoken to UC staff members about. Every year that pot that is put aside, not all of the money is spent. So there is already kind of a redundant amount in there that could be being put to better use and is just kind of, waiting for someone to come and do something with it. And sure, potentially that doesn't mean we can supply that money to everyone. But I think we can still supply it to all of the people who already get it, because clearly that is possible. And we can go further and extend that to, those people who also need a bit more support already. And
you mentioned wanting to make nightlife more accessible.
Yes.
How do you plan on doing that?
So I think there's a couple of things we can do. I'm kind of proposing lots of specific individual nights which are accessible to kind of groups. So for instance, kind of a night where there's no strobe lighting, to make it inclusive to people with epilepsy. Or equally a night where, there's quiet music, or kind of silent disco nights where you can turn down the music. So people who suffer from things like autism, can feel welcome and included and that kind of thing. Equally, hosting a club night that, is a sober club night, a non-drinking one. I think doing lots of little things kind of across the board to kind of make sure that, people do feel like they're being included, because obviously, to try and throw all of those things into one night, to do a night that, is a silent disco, no, bright lights and flashing lights, sober night as well, all in one, it becomes a tokenistic night. It's like, it's the night for everyone who can't go to, the club nights that are upon, week in, week out. So I think, across the term, we can do more to kind of increase the appeal to students who don't feel included at the moment.
And so accessibility in societies is something I've struggled with personally. How do you plan on, in COVID, we saw a great amount of societies moving all of their stuff online.
Yeah.
Most of that online provision for societies has been completely dropped. How do you plan on reaching those disabled students who can't make meetings?
So I think it's got to start kind of, at the activities officer level, kind of within USU. We've got to make sure that there is the support, because we can't just expect student leaders who have no training in this and realistically don't know what the issues are. I speak from that as a student leader myself. As the head of a society, I don't know what needs to be done, and I have not been offered training on that. That is an issue. There was the scandal that's kind of come out with news today of kind of, the initial elections campaign not being inclusive. That is a institutional issue, both within USU, and I think there's issues with it within the university as well. It needs to change at that kind of top level first. There needs to be, better training for not only USU staff members, but then also they can then offer that training to student leaders. Generally, I just think that student leaders aren't offered enough support. We put in so much time, so much effort to make the time for other students at university better, and we aren't supported enough in that. We aren't given enough training. We aren't given enough wellbeing support. I know students who had, mental breakdowns.
So this is something that Sophie Kelly, current activities officer, has been trying really hard to implement and trying to do training. How are you going to build on what she's done? Because she's faced some real blockages and difficulties with that.
So I think it's kind of twofold. First of all, it's making the resources that are available at the moment more accessible. They're kind of locked away behind, you have to have a USU email account to actually be able to find the student group resources. If you're a college committee, they're in a different place. Sports group, they're in even, another place again. Centralising those resources and making them accessible to everyone, and, making a song and dance about, here are where the resources are, here's where you can find them, and then as well as that...
Do you think that's enough?
No, I don't. I think on top of that, there do need to be regular training sessions run. And, there was an issue with the way that Sophie phrased it last term, kind of, this mandatory potential de-ratification of societies. I don't agree with that. But it is saying, there are these sessions available, and we highly encourage you because it's going to make you be able to run a better, more inclusive, and realistically more fun society if you can do that effectively. So, hosting training sessions regularly and listening to students. We're electing at the moment all of these student representatives.
How do you plan on reaching students? We've only got 30 seconds left.
I would like to go and speak to all of the societies directly, but, there's already kind of measures in place, stuff like U-suggestions, or however you pronounce that, and kind of, having more of an open door policy within USU of kind of, if you've got issues, please come and talk to us about them, but also reaching out equally to those societies and making sure that they are being heard, even if they're not kind of confident enough to speak up. Okay, thank you very much, Joe. We wish you, all the candidates, all the best. We're going now to Studio Red with Will and Sophie Kelly.
We are indeed. Who is the current sabbatical officer for